You are Locked On Rams Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Los Angeles, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well. What is going on, Ramley? And welcome back to the latest edition of the Locked On Rams Postcast, coming at you live, as always, after every single Rams game right here on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel, and after the fact, both on the channel and wherever you get the Locked On Rams podcast feed. If you don't know who I am, hello, everybody. My name is Gavin Carlson, former credentialed journalist in the Los Angeles area, was covering UCLA sports with the Daily Bruin, and now I'm a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Our team is the Rams, of course, and boy, oh boy, do we have quite the interesting debate ahead of us on this show, because with playoff seeding on the line, Sean McVay and the Rams choose to rest their stars, rest their starters, and ultimately take a costly loss to the Seattle Seahawks, falling to 10-7, but more importantly, falling to the number 4 seed in the NFC playoffs, not the number 3, and therefore they'll be taking on the loser of the Lions and Vikings in one of the most historic NFC wildcard / division races in the history of the darn NFL. So we got a huge debate ahead of us in terms of McVay's decision to rest the starters and ultimately really shake up who the Rams would be facing. If they won this game, they'd be taking on a Commanders team with a rookie quarterback, and instead they're playing an all-time great wild card opponent. We'll get into all of that for sure. But first and foremost, shout out to everybody in here, both watching live now or after the fact. Luckily for us, it is week 18, but it is not the end of our season, which means it is not the end of the postcast. We do have the playoffs next week, and hopefully it's not just one more week of postcast, but always a good opportunity to say shout out to everybody who's been along for the ride so far in the first ever season of these postcasts. It has been fun. It's still going, so no need to get too sappy and emotional there. Also, as always, quick shout out to the sponsor of today's show. It is LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Now let's get right into it. Like I said in that intro there, Sean McVay. And boy, I understand my place here. I am just a 22-year-old guy who covered UCLA sports, is a diehard sports fan. I consider myself pretty knowledgeable about the NFL and sports. I am not Sean McVay. I am not a Super Bowl champion head coach. I'm not one of the greatest offensive minds, dare I say, in the history of football, or at least the modern NFL. But it is certainly valid to question his decision today. And it was the expected decision. If you know anything, if you followed this team, if you followed McVay, not only listening to what he was saying in the days leading up to this game, but really throughout his whole coaching career, he's a firm believer in resting the starters, avoiding any injuries. And so I'm not at all surprised that Sean McVay elected to rest the stars: Stafford, Kupp, Nacua, Kyren, just to name a few. I'm not surprised at all. And of course, rightfully so, there are going to be people here who say, look at what happened in Green Bay today, and use that as an argument as to why Sean McVay was correct to do the thing he did in resting everybody. If you don't know what happened in Green Bay, Packers, I don't even know to be certain if they were playing for anything. I think they might have been playing for the chance to move up to the 6th seed. I assume they were, because they start, or actually, I don't know. Actually, I'll be honest. I don't want to say anything on either side there, but the Packers elect to play Jordan Love. They elect to play all their starters, and Christian Watson, who he's not a superstar. He's arguably not even their starting outside receiver. He's been hurt plenty of times. He suffers an injury, but the bigger story is that Jordan Love suffers an injury. They're calling it an elbow/arm injury. I haven't looked too much into it since then, because obviously I don't really care about the Packers, but a game that really didn't matter for the Packers, and you see 2 starters, including your star franchise quarterback, get hurt in week 18 when you've already clinched the playoffs. Of course, that what happened in that game is going to boost the people who are defending McVay's decision to rest everybody and take this loss. And of course, I will say one more thing before I jump into my argument. Of course, the Rams were close to winning this game without their starters, right? This is a post-game show. I'm normally supposed to recap the game. The decision to rest is the most important thing to talk about. But I will say, if you weren't watching or if you want me to remind you, the Rams were a Jimmy Garoppolo converted pass to Jordan Whittington on 4th down and one more throw into the end zone away from winning this game and resting their starters, which of course would have been the dream scenario. You rest everybody and still win, still avoid the Lions or Vikings. But of course, McVay's pass is low, or not McVay's, Jimmy Garoppolo's pass is low. Whittington isn't able to catch it and it ends up being a costly loss for the backups. With all that being said, with the caveats and all the, previewing it and giving everyone's side of it, my opinion is it's the wrong decision for Sean McVay. And it's hindsight is 2020, and I get it. If the Rams would have won this game with their backups, you would have had to say it's the right decision by McVay, of course. If the Rams start their guys and, dare I say, a Stafford or a Kupp or a Nakua or Kyron, somebody gets hurt, of course you're saying, oh my God, how could the Rams do that? And that's why you look at that Packers game, and what do you think Packers fans are saying right now? But what makes this different is that we have a historically good NFC wildcard opponent that we have to face. This is not just, if you're the 3, you play the 6, who's going to be slightly better or slightly worse than the 5 seed if you're the 4. No. This is not slightly worse. This is the Washington Commanders, who are a good football team, but their defense is terrible. Their starting quarterback, while phenomenal, while definitely the offensive rookie of the year, although Bo Nix really fighting for it, he's still a rookie quarterback making his playoff debut, his first playoff start on the road at SoFi Stadium. That is a much more favorable matchup. Not a little bit more, a much more favorable matchup than playing one of, if not the greatest wild card team to ever play in the NFL. Because we are playing a 14-win team, regardless of what happens tonight. A 14-win team who arguably could be a 15-win team if they weren't playing the other best team in the NFC tonight. It is the most challenging matchup that a 4 seed will probably ever have in NFL history. And so that is why you can't treat this like any other year. You can't treat this like any other, I'd rather play, the 5 seed, but hey, resting your starters is more important. No. This is different. And so what would I have done if I was Sean McVay or in his position? I would have started the starters in the first half. If the game is close and, you knock on wood, you dodged any injuries in the first half. If it's close or if you're able to go up 10 points, that would be ideal. But I think you at least start the starters for the first half and then see what happens. Ironically, and this is all, it's all adding to the debate and why I think it is a really fun debate. Ironically, the Rams fall behind in this game, and then they still are within a couple plays in the fourth quarter from winning it, taking the lead late in the fourth quarter. So for the starters being rested, you couldn't have asked for anything more, right? To fall behind and yet still come that close to winning, you got to give the backups credit, of course, and you got to give McVay. He was really close to looking like an absolute genius. But in my opinion, based on what we saw, imagine if instead of the Rams falling behind 2 scores in the first half, they start their starters. They get up 7 points. And then maybe you rest your starters at halftime and see if your backups can win the game in the second half with a 7-point lead. Or maybe if the Rams starters play and they fall behind, then you say, hey, we couldn't win the first half with our starters. No need to risk them in the second. And then you rest them in the second. I get it. Or that would make more sense to me. But to not even give them a chance, I don't know, man. And we've got all sorts. I really want to hear your guys' opinions in the comment section. Craig's saying that the starters or the receivers should have started, and that Matthew Stafford, I assume you're saying, shouldn't have. That I kind of disagree with, because in my opinion, I think it's much more likely for a wide receiver to get hurt than a quarterback, especially a quarterback who's not going to run, especially a quarterback that's going to do everything he can to throw the ball away and avoid getting hit in Stafford in this game and really any game. We know how much he's been hit. We know how much the line stinks at times. But in my opinion, if you're starting the receivers, you've got to start Stafford. I think the smart thing to do is you start him in the first half. And I get it. There's going to be people saying, how could you say that? If you're going to play him the whole game, or if you're not going to play him, don't play him at all. Why would you risk hurting him in the first half, but not risk hurting him in the second? There's going to be some people who say, start the backups, and if the game is close in the fourth quarter, then bring Stafford in and try to win the game. I get it. There's valid arguments on all sides. But one thing that, a couple NFL content creators I were here listening to talking about with their respective teams is when you rest guys, it's good to tell them they're going to start so they prepare for the game like they would any other week. They go through the film. They go through the mental preparation. They go through the physical preparation. And then maybe they just play a drive and then you rest them. I mean, heck, even what the Bills did with Josh Allen, I'm sure he knew he was just going to play one play and then get out of there. But even then, if you tell him he's starting and he preps like he's starting and he stays mentally fresh and physically fresh, it just helps in terms of avoiding any rust going into that playoff game, right? But I think at the very least, the Rams should have done that. But maybe, given that this game does mean something, you find an even happier medium where you not only let them prep during the week like they're starting, but you do let them start. And you do give them maybe 2 drives. See if Stafford can just go touchdown to start the game. Not to mention, the Rams offense has looked terrible the last few weeks with the starters. I saw people debating it with Houston. Should they have rested Stroud? I thought they did it perfectly. The Houston offense has looked really suspect. You got to get some good mojo going into the playoffs. They started Stroud. He, I believe, just went down the field and scored a touchdown in his first drive, and then they rested him, and whatever happened. They weren't playing for anything. They weren't playing for anything, and they started their guys. We were playing for a better, more favorable matchup in the playoffs, and we didn't even give our starters a chance. And who knows, man? Based on what we saw, this team was down double digits in the first half and still almost won the game. Imagine if they started their guys and were up 7 at halftime and then brought in the backups, or up 10 at halftime and brought in the backups. They win the game, and I get it. If they start those guys and one of them gets hurt in the first quarter, what I'm saying right now sounds foolish, but it is a unique situation. It is a unique situation where this loss does not just mean you're playing a higher seed. It means you're playing the greatest wild card team in NFL history. I'm so serious. And after this break, we're going to preview what that matchup will look like against either the Lions or the Vikings after our first break here. Stick with me on the Locked On Rams Postcast. I'll be right back. We got a lot to talk about. Now, today's show is brought to you once again by LinkedIn Jobs. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself as someone who, I've used it from the other side, okay? From both sides, actually. And I can tell you, it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. I was on a recruiting firm company in high school. I was kind of an intern / working there. It was a recruiting firm. We use LinkedIn Jobs. We use LinkedIn Recruiter to find candidates for other small businesses. And I've been on the other side of LinkedIn as a recent college grad who's been looking for internships and jobs. Of course, I found my current job with the Clippers through LinkedIn. Okay. So LinkedIn, I know it from all sides. It's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. So small businesses are wearing a lot of hats. Every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. So hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And today's show is also brought to you by a new sponsor, Rocket Money. And boy, this is a cool one for me. I use Rocket Money every day, literally every day. I'm not lying. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That has definitely happened to me. I'm so serious with this. It's cool. These sponsors, normally I see I'm going to have a sponsor ad read, and I try to get familiar with the app and use it if there's a promo code or anything. This is one I was using way before, kind of just like LinkedIn. It's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, including myself, and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Like literally, I have people who have spreadsheets where they track all their spending. Bro, Rocket Money tells me all my spending. I can categorize all of my reoccurring expenses. And so I know how much I'm spending on everything from rent to gas to, food, groceries, all my extra stuff, gym stuff, everything. Rocket Money, it's the best. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Back here live on the Locked On Rams Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel. I'm Gavin Carlson. And once again, Sean McVay elects to rest the starters. It's a very debatable decision as the Rams ultimately lose this game 30-25 to the Seattle Seahawks and fall from the 3 seed to the 4 seed, which means they'll take on the loser of the historic matchup here tonight, starting in about 30 minutes, Vikings-Lions. And that's what we're going to do in segment 2 is preview both that game tonight just because it's fun and also the Rams versus both of those opponents. Really unique game, obviously. Tonight will be the most combined wins ever in a matchup. 28 wins combined between these two teams coming into tonight because both teams are 14-2. So once again, this is a historic situation here in the NFC where you have 2 of the 3 best teams in the NFL happen to be in the same division playing tonight. The winner is the 1 seed. The loser drops all the way to the 5. And so what the Rams are going to face next week is essentially a team that's going to be a win away from being the number 1 seed in the NFC, right? We're playing a team who in any other year is the number 1 seed in the NFC and is resting this week or next week. And instead, we got to host them. So in terms of the game tonight, I think I'm going to give this one to the Vikings. Now, a lot of people are saying, it just doesn't feel right for the Lions to be not a number 1 seed. All year, the Lions were kind of viewed as one of the best teams in the NFL coming into the year. They've been one of the best teams in the NFL all season. But because of a loss here or there, there's a very good chance that the Lions don't even win their division, don't even get a bye, don't even any of that, and don't even play at home in the playoffs. It feels weird. And I think they're going to lose this game because they are so injured. We know this. Everyone talks about David Montgomery. That's not a big deal. The bigger injuries are their entire defense is hurt. Not just Aiden Hutchinson, who's a defensive player of the year candidate. And we get it. They've been without him a while. But they can't generate any pressure on the quarterback. Their defense, if secondary, was bad coming into the year. It is now just darn right awful because of how hurt they are. And so I believe the Vikings are a favorite in this game. Although I'm seeing right now that the Lions are a 3-point favorite, which is interesting to me. I get it. The Lions are at home, but the Vikings are just as hot as the Lions, just as good as the Lions, and they're healthier than the Lions. So my prediction is the Vikings are going to win this game. And if they do, boy, the Rams have to play a team that was arguably the best team in the NFL all season in the Detroit Lions in week 1 of the NFC playoffs. That is tough. But my hot take here is that is the better matchup for the Rams to face because Brian Flores, defensive coordinator for the Vikings, he's going to dial it up if he were to play against the Rams. They are going to get pressure on Matthew Stafford every play. The offense for the Vikings is not as good as the Lions. Of course not. That Lions offense, Ben Johnson, one of the top 5 offensive minds in the NFL. We know what happened the first time we played the Lions. We probably could have won that game. But the Vikings, they got an offensive genius as a head coach as well, and Kevin O'Connell, who we are very familiar with here in Los Angeles. Sean McVay, very familiar. I think the Vikings are just a more well-rounded team than the Lions right now. I think so. And so that's why I think the Vikings are going to win this game. And that's why I would be glad if the Vikings won this game because the Rams get a weaker opponent, in my opinion. Now, either way, the Rams are going to be the underdogs next week. Let's be honest. The Rams have had a magical run late after starting 1-4. You win 9 of your last 11 coming into today. And I know we got all sorts of debates in the comments here. BC saying, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. BC here is saying, I'm trying to find it. Yes, the Detroit's defense isn't great, but it wasn't great last year either, even with Hutchinson, and we still lost to them. I get it. BC saying last year's offense had better stats for the Lions. I get it. Arion Jones is saying we already beat the Vikings. Look, there's going to be all sorts of debates about everything on today's show. Who the Rams should want to play. Should they have won this game? Should they have played their starters? All that. I get it. We already beat the Vikings, but you have to admit this is a different Vikings team right now than the one that the Rams played. Okay? And I get it. We won by 10 points. The Vikings at this point weren't elite. They weren't. They were 5-1. I get it. But 5-1 is not 14-2. After that loss to us, they have won 9 games in a row. 9 games in a row. 9. And this was a very unique game for the Rams, that game against the Vikings, because Kupp and Nacua were both back in that game. So we had all of our guys back in a must-win game for us at home. All of the, extra stuff. And I'm not a huge fan of all the extra stuff. I usually focus on the X's and O's, the actual legit stuff, not all this momentum and stuff, which is kind of a facade. Kind of. But that extra stuff played a role. It's a must-win game for the Rams. The Rams are 2-4 coming into that game. They're at home. 2-4. At home. Must-win game for a team that is playoffs or bust. Against a Vikings team that is 5-1, a Vikings team that, let me remind you, loses their star left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, to a torn ACL and MCL in this game. So they lose one of their most important players on offense in the game, in the same game where we have both of our starting wide receivers rejoin our team. Look, I would love to say that the Rams are favored against either team they play, but I'm sorry. That was a unique game. The Vikings have won 9 games in a row since that. 9 games in a row. And so either way, the Rams have to face a historically good wildcard team coming off a loss. Do you know how hard it is to beat a good team coming off a loss? Really hard. Really hard. So once again, it just adds to my opinion on why the Rams should have taken tonight's game or today's game a little more seriously and find a better balance. Play the starters a half or something. Because right now, I'll be honest, previewing next week's game, I think the Rams are underdogs against both teams. My hot take is I would rather play the Lions because at least in that game, it is going to be a shootout of all shootouts. And of course, their offense is probably a little bit better than ours, especially with how it's been playing lately. But I'm taking our defense clearly over the Lions' defense in its current state. You cannot say that about the Vikings. You can make the argument the Vikings have a better offense than us and and a better defense. Like BC is saying, this offense has done very little since Buffalo. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And so, yeah, I think we play the Lions and you just hope that the combination of the Rams being rested and having that pedigree and having a genius offensive mind and a Hall of Fame quarterback and a Hall of Fame 1, maybe 2 receivers, and a star running back in Kyron, and you say, hey, the combination of their weak defense and our still at its peak very good offense, it can be a shootout, and the Rams being at home can win one and flip the script on what happened in the season opener. But against the Vikings, what is the argument for the Vikings or for the Rams being favored over the Vikings other than we beat them earlier in the year? I don't know any other argument. Sam Darnold chokes in his first playoff start ever. Maybe that's the argument, but I can see it right now. It's already comeback player of the year season for Sam Darnold. I can easily see him come to the SoFi Stadium, his return to LA, the former USC quarterback, already, due to get the comeback player of the year award. And I could just see him having a coming out party, questions about whether or not they should extend him. I could just see him going on a national stage, coming off a loss tonight where people then question, is Darnold the man? Should they go to McCarthy? And he shows up at SoFi Stadium next week and he throws for 4 touchdowns and he says, I'm the man, and he earns that big contract and we take a loss and our season is over. I could so easily see that headline, that scenario happen. Whereas if the Rams play the Lions, you almost can guarantee what it's going to be. It's going to be 35-32, which team has the ball last, right? That's my opinion. The only scenario where the Rams should be feeling good about playing the Vikings, the only argument is that they've already beaten them. That's the only argument. And that was a century ago. In this current NFL right now, with how the Rams offense looks and how the Vikings look as a whole, there isn't much of an argument. Their offense is better, their defense is better, and their head coach, and O'Connell, is almost as good as McVay. So, in my opinion, it's a rough draw, obviously, for the Rams either way, and it didn't have to be that way if they won this game. When we come back from our last break, and it's going to be a shorter third segment because I've been talking a lot about these two debatable things to start. One more debate. Regardless of what happens next week, was this a successful season for the Los Angeles Rams? And also, if it's not already, what needs to happen in the playoffs for it to be a successful season for the Los Angeles Rams? I don't even fully know my answer to that question yet. That's how debatable it is. But we'll get right to that after our last break here on the Locked On Rams Postcast. Now, finally, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. You know, like I said, I'm surprised that the Lions are 3-point favorites in this game tonight against the Vikings. If I was in a state where FanDuel is legal, I would be hammering the Vikings. I don't know about hammering, but I certainly would have money on the Vikings tonight. So if you are in a state where it's legal, go to FanDuel, go to the website, and in my opinion, don't blame me if this happens. Do not blame me if the Vikings lose this game, but I would put some money on the Vikings if I were you. Just visit the FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com to join today and get started once again with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here live one more time on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel. This is the Locked On Rams Postcast. I'm Gavin Carlson. The final segment of the regular season. We will, of course, be back next week for the playoffs against the loser of tonight's huge game between the Lions and Vikings. But before we quickly wrap this one up, my question to you all, I want to hear it in the comment section either now or after the fact, and I'm going to answer it as well. Is this a successful season, regardless of what happens in the playoffs for the Rams? Coming into the year, I don't know what your expectations were. My expectations were to get in the playoffs, whether it was winning the division or just getting in as a wild card. My expectation was to get in. My opinion was if they got in and won a playoff game, you have to say it's a success. Come on. How many teams in the NFL can you win a playoff game and say it's an unsuccessful season? And I get it. This is LA. There's big expectations. I get it. We have an older team we're playing for right now. But come on. People were coming to the year saying that this Rams defense was going to be one of the worst in the NFL. People were coming to the year questioning if Cooper Kupp was going to even play, how much he would be hurt, how much was left in this tank for Matthew Stafford. And this is before we even get to how the season actually started. The season started 1-4, and you're NFC West champs. In my opinion, if you win next week, especially now knowing that you're playing the greatest wild card team in NFL history, either way, if you win that game, oh, come on. It is an A++ season. If you lose that game closely, I still think you won your division. I mean, how many, come on, other than Chiefs, I guess Ravens, I guess the Lions, how many other teams in the NFL winning the Bills, of course? How many other teams? You win the division and it's not a successful season. Come on, let's be real. I think it's a successful season regardless of what happens next week. And that was before we knew we were playing the hardest NFC wildcard team ever, right? If we were playing the Commanders and we lost the game to the Commanders it would really sting, and it would feel like a missed opportunity to get one step closer to another Super Bowl, because that's a game you should win at home. But you'd still say, in the grand scheme of things, you started the season 1-4 and you hosted a playoff game and won your division. That is a successful year. And not to mention, the offense next season will maybe be a little bit worse because everyone's getting older. But that defense is going to be better next year. And so this is a year where you competed, you won a division, you maybe win a playoff game or two, but you also feel good about going next season. Look at my other team, the Saints. You win the first 2 games of the year, you feel on top of the world, you're a disaster. You don't have any future. Look at how many teams. The Bengals, think about the year the Bengals had. You have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and you didn't make the playoffs. And now you might lose T. Higgins, and now you got to pay Jamar Chase, right? This year could have gone so much worse for the Rams. But instead, you're NFC West champs, you overcome a 1-4 start, and you're hosting a playoff game. It's a win, period. Successful year, yes. Now, that being said, of course, if you don't win next week, it's going to be disappointing, of course. And people are going to question what we did today and having to play that game. Because I truly believe if we're hosting the Commanders next week, I know how exciting Jane Daniels is. I know how underwhelming we've been the last couple of weeks. But I think we're favorites at home against a rookie quarterback making his playoff debut against an awful defense in the Commanders. I think you've got to give us the nod there. And then you're talking about playing the Eagles or something in the second week of the playoffs. You probably lose that game, and you say, hey, we won a playoff game. Absolutely, it's a successful season. But with everything you're facing now next year, with everything you overcame, or next week, and with everything you overcame to get to the playoffs, it is a positive year and a positive step, because next year feels like a year where if you keep everyone intact, you keep that young defense developing, why can't the Rams be the clear favorites to win the NFC West next year? I mean, Seattle, maybe they get a little bit better because their coach is going to be more experienced. But Arizona, talks about trading Kyler Murray? The Niners looks like maybe a dynasty that didn't win anything, by the way. A dynasty crumbling. The Rams are favorites to win the NFC West next season without a doubt. Without a doubt. Before anything happens in the offseason, as long as everybody stays for the Rams. Before anything happens in the draft. Before anything happens in free agency. Regardless of what happens next week in the playoffs. The Rams are the clear favorites to repeat as NFC West champions, and that makes it a successful year. Not to mention, if the defense does develop, if the offense is able to have a healthy offensive line for most of the year, and the older guys, Stafford and Kupp, don't, get older too much. Come on now. Rams could be a problem next year, okay? So, successful year, absolutely. Making an even greater one if you can shock really the NFL world and beat the best wildcard team in NFL history next week. So, enough for me. It's been a long show. A lot to talk about. In case you forgot, the Rams lost a football game today. I know we weren't really talking about it that much. Rams 25, Seattle 30. Not many takeaways from that game just because most people weren't playing. But yeah, go watch that historic game tonight. It's starting in like 10 minutes. You were going to watch it regardless, even if it didn't matter for the Rams, because once again, it's the greatest regular season matchup maybe in NFL history. But we know we're all going to be watching it closely now. In terms of who you should want to win or what you should want to happen, I think the most ideal thing would be one team playing shockingly bad, like looking concerningly bad, because it would mean that they lost that game, and then there's a lot of concerns and a lot of question marks going into next week. I'm not going to root for any injuries. Of course, theoretically, the best outcome would be a team losing and losing guys in the process. I'm not rooting for that. I'm sorry. What I am going to root for, though, is either team, whether it's the Lions or the Vikings, getting absolutely crushed and looking like there are question marks going into next week against our Rams at SoFi. That would be ideal. If a team were to get crushed, I most likely think it's the Lions getting crushed because they have no defense right now. So we will certainly be back next week after the playoff game. We don't know when that game is. I think there's rumors it's going to be Monday night, just because it's a 4-5 game. You want it to be a standalone game. It's going to have one of the best wildcard teams ever, as I've said 400 times on this show. Rumors have it Monday Night Football. We'll see what it is. But either way, I will be here live on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel for a playoff edition of the Locked On Rams Postcast. But for now, Rams lose. Rams have a big game to watch tonight, and I'll see you guys all next week. Take care, and even in a loss, Whose house? Rams house. And it will be Rams house next week. See y'all there. Take care. Go Rams.